Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm indeed honored and delighted to be here this evening to be with you in the City of Joy. My proud privilege to be moderating an awesome panel today, and as it unfolds, probably you will get to see what kind of excitement and challenge which is in store for us, specifically for the IT industry as we go along, when we see the kind of competition which is hotting up across the globe. What's that we are doing and where we see the opportunities which are hidden out there, and how we are coping up as a competitive IT industry which has become one of the key contributors to the growth of our country. To begin with, I will probably share some bit about some statistics on what's going on in terms of the numbers. And then I'm going to be inviting all the panelists to come up for about 5 to 10 minutes. And post that, we will open the house for any questions that you may have. And we'll be happy to answer those. Having said that, let's get going. When we look at the Indian KPO market, today we have more than 350,000 professionals who are involved in this. And if you look at it from the perspective of growth, there's huge opportunity which is sitting around. There's a vast talent pool, availability of cost-effective skills. In terms of competitiveness and efficiency, I think, leave alone the fact that the piece of labor arbitrage, which probably was existing earlier, and therefore in the initial years, it was primarily low-end type of activity which was going on insofar as the business process outsourcing type of work which was going on. But today, I think the growth which is happening or the opportunity which we see is really going to be driven by a couple of areas. One, what I call is the challenge of managing big data, and therefore what kind of stuff which are coming out of that is something which we will get to see as we go along. So data clearly has become an asset for most of the companies, be it a telecom company, be it a bank, be it a retail company, or be it the business of government. All of them are grappling with the advent of data, which is not necessarily the one which is sitting within the organizations for their own internal system. Just to give you an example, if I'm an automobile company, no matter what we get to see which is coming out of the ERP system or various systems which are sitting around, one has to also track what's the happiness level which people are sharing, especially in the social media today. Many people, when they are unhappy, they don't really pick up the phone and call. They actually go out in the social media and share their experiences. Which means, if you look at the data points, it is not just the one which is the transactions which are sitting around within the system, but you need to track what's going on out there in the cyberspace. And when you analyze, probably the real reason could come out that the unhappiness could be because one particular dealer in that area is not the one who is providing the kind of services what it was expected of. Scenario is exactly the same if you look at telecom industry, where the data volumes, just to give you some idea, in India, most of the big telecom companies are about managing 100 to 150 million to 160 million customers. Visualize in such huge numbers the amount of transactions which are going on to find a pattern on who to go with, what kind of a proposition to sell, becomes humanly impossible. To give you a little bit of feel on, I talked about 150 million customer of a, let's say, telecom company. You know what they are making the money in India? India is probably one of the most competitive market for them because the average revenue per user in India is around $2 to $3 as compared to elsewhere in the world where it is far more. So scenario being that if they want to sell a download of a ringtone, each ringtone costs 10 rupees only. If they could sell to 150 million customers, one ringtone each, visualize what kind of money are we talking about. But that's where comes the challenge, that who would download what ringtone? I may be interested in downloading a jazz tune, could be Chris Botti, whereas my chauffeur is interested in Munni Badnamoi. So if that be the case, with what proposition should the service provider send me a campaign? If it is the same campaign which comes to me, that goes to my chauffeur, would be a disaster. And so I'm trying to kind of give you a little bit of example. So that's where comes in the scenario of how to kind of crunch so much of data to figure out the patterns in terms of who has what propensity to buy. Scenario is exactly the same, whether it is a capital market. In capital market, you would have heard of scenarios like 5 friends getting together, one selling a bunk share of 10 rupees to the second, and second was selling the same one for 20 rupees, third for 30, and by the time it goes to the fifth one, the price gets pumped up to 50 rupees, and by then everybody has used the social media to talk about, wow, this share has huge potential, and that's when, the general public comes in, and fifth guy sells those at 50 rupees and divides the booty amongst 5 of them. These are the kind of scenarios which were happening. Now, visualize in a scenario like this, it is not just a transactional system of a let's say, a stock exchange alone which is to be monitored, but you have to monitor what's going on in the cyberspace. So the transaction volumes therefore becomes huge, and that's where the opportunity which is sitting around to kind of look at what I call big analytics deriving out of the big data. And when we look at big analytics, what exactly are we talking about? Some of the interesting facts which you look at today in the Indian market, currently it contributes to about 20% of the KPO market, and the CAGR is 25% upwards. Good news, Amrish said that he would be delighted to see that Kolkata or West Bengal becomes the center of activity for analytics. Well, we have all the good things happening here. First and foremost, availability of the talent. We have some wonderful institutes here, starting with ISI, to IIT Kharagpur, to Jadavpur University, to Calcutta University, to even the private sector institutions which are now investing, such as Calcutta Business School, to what have you. And that really gives flow of talent, which is most important for this. And it's evident if you see organizations like HSBC, the global analytical system is actually sitting in Calcutta. So my take is, I think there is enough and more which is happening in India, which, for example, large number of global banks such as Citibank, HSBC, Barclays, I could be naming many more, they have all set up shops in India for their analytical, what they call center of excellences. They are not the only ones. Even in retail, companies like Target, for instance, and even in consulting, McKinsey and so on, the number of such centers which are out here is primarily because of not just the cost arbitrage. It is because they see the kind of talent which is available here in India is of a nature which really gives them the clear-cut value and differentiation that they are looking for. So my take here is, when we look at this, we will continue to remain competitive because the area of analytics has a 3-dimensional need. Dimension 1 is understanding of what it is, which is basic math, stats and what have you. Dimension 2 is understanding of the system with which one is working. And dimension 3 is the domain knowledge. For example, if within banking somebody is doing it, one could be the customer intelligence related stuff, one could be risk management kind of stuff, and so on. So each one of these are very, very specialized area. And hence combination of the 3 is really giving us that competitive edge for us to be, going ahead and creating a differentiation in the global market, because of which we are attracting such work which is coming to us. So obviously, if I share here, you heard that all the services companies who are operating out of India are playing in multiple verticals. And good news is analytics actually runs through across most of the different areas, including in terms of the industries. Now let me give you a flavor of what analytics I'm talking about. It actually begins with what we call the reactive type of analytics, where we use standard reports to things like ad hoc reports to alerts and so on, which really bring out beyond a threshold report can come out. The ones which give much higher contribution to the services is the second piece, which is what we call the proactive type of analytics, where you do statistical analytics, forecasting, prediction and optimization. And you heard from Doc that the kind of stuff she has been doing. Essentially, that's the higher spectrum where the value becomes far more from the perspective of what clients are going to be deriving. So if you look at, I've just drawn four, is the standard 4x4 matrix. The first one is the BI. BI piece is primarily the reactive type of analytics, where we do the standard reports, ad hoc reports to what have you. Going to the next segment where I'm talking about the big analytics, using the same data, which means not big data, you could be doing predictive type of analytics. Whereas on the right hand side segment, I'm talking about big data and BI. This is again when we are using big data, but we are confining ourselves only to the past trends and stuff like that. But the top right hand quadrant is the one where I'm referring to big data and big analytics. And this is where it comes in today's future, because this is the area where the conventional, let's say, the databases, the size is not able to take care of the needs. And that's why the current generation technologies such as in-memory analytics and databases are coming in. And that's where comes in the applicability of things like, just to give you an example, let's say if I'm using my credit card, it is nice that somebody catches a fraud. Post the fraud is done, in which case maybe 3-4 transactions have already gone and I have to fight with the bank that, hey, listen, I have not done it. But if the fraud gets caught before it is committed, that would require a different kind of a methodology, because here we are dealing with millions of transactions going simultaneously, and that requires big data and big analytics. Same thing is going to be happening tomorrow when we are talking of geofencing. And when I use the word geofencing, visualize you walk into a mall and you have done the first transaction. And here is your bank has a strategic tie-up with the telecom company, which gives the data to the bank that, hey, I'm in the vicinity of this mall. The bank knows what is my propensity to buy, what kind of stuff which I do, what's my cycle in terms of when I buy the jewelry and when I buy the clothes and when I buy books and so on. And based on those patterns, I got a SMS which says that, hey, Mr. Sen, there's a deal for you going in this particular bookshop because I know that you end up buying this. So those are the kind of things which can then become a reality, and this is not just a reality pertaining to business alone. This reality also gets used when we are talking of public administration, trying to catch terrorists. Because a terrorist always has three things. He has to have A, funding, B, the logistics, C, the communication. And visualize, if I have to marry all the three to find a pattern, it becomes absolutely difficult without using analytics. And those are the kind of things which comes in handy And my belief is, going forward, I think we have a great future ahead of us. And certainly we will continue to be competitive, because such a scenario actually spans through all the business functions, be it operational efficiency, be it customer related scenarios and so on. So to sum up, I would say that the advent of big data, the advent of big analytics is really going to create big opportunity for all of us. And I know my fellow panelists are eminent professionals who are managing their respective businesses, and I know you would love to hear from them in terms of how they are leveraging the opportunities in their respective areas, managing the kind of global competition which we are facing today. So with that, may I invite now Mr. Gaurav.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Shudipto. I think you brought the whole context and it will make my task a little easier. The topic is, can we remain competitive? I think I would just like to draw a contrast. I think maybe some years ago it was always discussed that will we remain cost competitive, and today I think when we talk about the IT industry, we talk about will we remain competitive. So I think there's a dimensional change there. What I'm going to try and do is just put a few slides which give the dimension, give some facts. There's nothing new in this. I think as members of this industry, we would have seen all of this. And then I'll just try and conclude by saying a few things which, according to me, will summarize whether India can remain competitive on the IT front. So, just talking about the industry, I think 2 or 3 things there. The industry is over $100 billion. It's the largest private sector employer, over 3 million. In the global scenario, we take leadership with 55% share. And I've just talked about the last one, which is it's the epicenter of global tech industry with almost 45% of the headcount of global MNCs. And more importantly, 20 to 30% of the global technology R&D firms. Again, these are just some facts which try and put in perspective where India is positioned. Again, just to point out a few other things here, there is a very strong ecosystem. There's more than 43 tier 2 or 3 cities, and we see that growing. I think if we talk about the cost competitiveness, we can say that we are largely cost efficient, and I'll have a slide which will talk about that further. And picking on further from what Shudipto said, I think more than 40% of the top 100 firms offer SMAC solutions. I'm not even talking about the Internet of Things, which I think is the next trend, but it's just again a dimension to remember. I will also just mention on this that we are probably one of the few countries to offer the full spectrum of IT and BPM services. This is another way of presenting this, but it's not only the countries, it's the verticals, it's the ownership profile, the full gamut of services. Again, worth thinking through. Not a slide which I like to share, but it's on the costs. If you look at the operating cost per FT for IT services, I think we are way down the ladder. We've tried to compare it with a lot of countries. And similarly for BPM services, you can see that though we consider Bangalore to be quite expensive, but if you compare it on the dimension of other countries around the world, clearly we are cost competitive. So what's happened in the last few years? There's been disruptive innovation, which was more on cost, quality and productivity. That's some 20 years ago. Then there was this productivity improvement and innovation. And again, I think going further, we're going to see disruptive innovation. And I think we're at that threshold where a wave of innovation is going to engulf not only the industry here, but it'll have its impact all over the world. I would just like to conclude actually by saying a few things on where I think, what's going to drive the fact in India. Will we remain cost competitive? I think there are a few things to think of. One, we've seen the Indian IT industry reinvent itself. We've gone through a tough time and we've seen how people have reacted to that. That could be examples of where the BPO industry has in many ways countered what inefficacy the government had. It could be a Satyam example, but there have been ways that we have encountered problems and overcome them. I think also the government today is far more alive to this. Hopefully with the new government, I think at least the next 5 years, we should see a much more positive sentiment on this. Shrudipto mentioned it, but I'll also again re-emphasize the demographic dividend is something we cannot ignore. There's enough said about this and I don't want to get into the details on that. The emphasis on education is another factor which is going to make a big difference to where we are. And globalization per se, where I think the so-called brain drain is reversing. We think that we're seeing entrepreneurs and skill coming back to India. I think all these 4 or 5 factors will make the difference, which leads me to the conclusion that we will remain competitive in the IT industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I invite Rajoshri Chatterjee now?
Thank you, distinguished panelists and the audience who I know after a long day, I think I wouldn't want to test your patience. So, no slides and make it interactive, disrupt me with disruptive innovation, disruptive questions as well, but maybe towards the end of the session. So as I was coming back, honestly why you don't see slides is not because I'm a great thinker, because I didn't have the time to prepare it. Okay, so that's a very blunt and honest admission. So it had to be extended. And I was thinking, okay, what to speak. So as I joined ITOS about a year back, and before that it was 12 fulfilling years in Cognizant. And just to tell you what my role, quite unlike most of the IT companies that you think, we are an upside down company, because for us, offshore is Europe. Out of the 80,000 population, 70,000 is Europe, and my KPI, my appraisal parameters are how much work can I bring to India. Okay. So while we are talking of Indian IT being competitive, that's actually part of my KPIs. But hold on, it's not so easy. When my role description was being given, my super bosses consciously decided I can't be lording over India. We have other delivery centers, Morocco, Poland, Spain, Portugal, and I equally am responsible for delivery out of those. Honestly, I jumped at this. Wow, Indian heading global delivery centers. Nothing good, nothing can be better than it. When I get into the job, I think it is very consciously by design why they did it that way. Saying on one hand, yes, we want to move work to India, but you got to be competitive. Don't take it for granted that just because you want to move work to India, it's going to be coming your way. So every time there is a project that we do, I have to literally convince my internal customers India is indeed the best location, not just from a time point of view, not just because we work long extended hours and we will work on Saturdays probably without billing the client, not just because of those labor arbitrage factors, but there's a value aspect of it. So that's, I think we heard about the cost aspect of it, there's a value aspect of it. And there is another aspect which we don't quite normally think in the world of IT, but forget IT for a moment, right? And IT has to be serving industries. Take two other sectors which have had an opportunity to interact with. Take our homegrown automobile sector. Yesterday I was hearing a news article that a very recently launched motor vehicle from a very reputed brand, an MNC brand operating in India, decided to do away with airbags as a base option. Right? And it tells you something that the same company operating globally, airbag is not an option. So what it tells you is competitiveness just to be achieved by compromises. And yeah, to begin with the same three letters, but I think we need to differentiate competitiveness by substandardizing or making unhealthy compromises. So where do I see it in the world of IT? So this was really yesterday's observation, but I had a chance to observe it. There was an uncanny resemblance. So how does it relate to my own work? Step back, I think we all talk of Indian IT services. Yeah, we are a service, we are doing excellent. I think from the days of TCS and every company that has been born out of TCS or even some of these more recent startups, we are doing phenomenally well when it comes to services. Name one product company that has started in India. Anyone? One Indian product company? You have Indians who started product companies outside, but you don't have a single product company in India. Okay? By the way, you know what? India has probably the largest population in the world, so there's no dearth of a market. Contrast with Israel. Would you consider Israel for English skills, population, time zone advantage? None of that. But probably some of the best known IT products, at least as much as I know in the field of IT security. Forefront was one of those products which was initially by the Israeli company, then got acquired by Microsoft because of some phenomenal characteristics. Israel probably always is hypersensitive about security, but I think they've seen it in the other space. That's on a lighter vein, but it tells you that we are God knows how many millions in IT services, and we seem to be quite content with the work that we are doing day in, day out. Probably as a matter of self-introspection, we don't think of innovation till the customer really threatens us. I'm going to go to a competitor, so what more are you going to give me for less? That's somewhere, and that's been reflected. So it's somewhere necessary for us to introspect. We've had a fantastic journey. If you go back to the Y2K days, the mindset of the customers was, I have the solution, I need you to do exactly as I tell you. Great, we delivered. From the Y2K days, then we got into the application maintenance or application management piece of it. Again, little bits of problems, I give it to you, solve it, great. Then we got into application development. Okay, we've gotten there as well, we've been doing great. Now again, when I have some discussions with some of my customers, when they ask for innovation, some of these skills, and I'm sure some of you who are from the IT industry, you might get a great developer, you might get probably a great tester. How many architects do we produce? And then we always struggle. Okay. Well,